How much do you want to bet I can throw a football over the mountains? This is obviously a ridiculous proposition made by a ridiculous human being who goes by the name of Uncle Rico. However, it also captures a feeling that rots in the heart of all of us who can't let the past go. Someone notice me. Notice that I'm actually special. I'm not just another boring nobody in a boring town. I hunt wolverines. I have awesome skills. And I've been chatting online with babes all day. This is Napoleon Dynamite.
I like that. That was pretty solid.
Thank you.
I was curious what you were going to do for this one.
I appreciate it. Man, I know it's cheesy to say this, but like I fucking needed this movie.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I know we're going to talk about other things before we fully jump into the movie, but this is a movie that you and I have discussed covering in the podcast for a very long time. Like it goes back to the beginning when we first started podcasting, before this even became Movies That Changed Us.
Oh, you mean when our podcast was like a Patreon exclusive thing?
Yeah, or even when we were putting it on the main reaction channel when it was called Nice Dude Movie Podcast and all that stuff too.
Oh, yeah, but we never did an episode on Napoleon Dynamite.
No, we did. I'm saying it's one we've discussed doing for a while is what I'm saying. It's one we've wanted to do that we've talked about.
You're right.
That we've held on very closely.
Yeah.
But we were always like, oh, let's save that one for because that one's pretty special. And I think, just because of recent circumstances that are happening and you're heading out of town fairly soon, we wanted to get some stuff out that was like easy for us to talk about and get excited to talk about without having to really watch and think about and break down and get deep about.
Especially since last week was Good Will Hunting. We wanted like a palate cleanser.
Exactly. We're like, let's do something funny.
It's been
simple.
It was like Spy Who Shagged Me, Good Will Hunting, and then Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I was going to say like now, because last time you threw me under the fucking bus with the question of what art have you been consuming, I'm going to pass it to you now.
Okay.
And so, Altaf, what have you consumed recently?
Okay, so I listen pretty regularly the podcast Lonely Island and Seth Meyers podcast, where they like each week recap a digital short that they've done, and it's just, I'm not a huge fan of those. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm not usually a huge fan of the recap podcasts because it feels very like, it honestly most of the time will feel like people who haven't had work in a while recapping a show and living the glory days again. But because all these people are still really successful and they're not just coming back, it doesn't feel like a money grab either. It feels like they love each other and they like actually have a fun time talking about it and they're really funny. But that's not the art I've been consuming. It's in the podcast, they did a 2-part episode on Lonely Island's album Incredibad, which has classics like I'm on a Boat, Jizz in My Pants, and I realized like, oh, I haven't listened to the whole album in such a long time. Like the whole Incredibad album. And some of those songs on that album never made it into like a digital short. They never have a video.
Well, I would hope so. There has to be incentive to listen to the album as opposed to just watching the videos. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of songs that like are just still really funny and good, but like never made a video. And so I listened to the whole album. After listening to the episode on the podcast, I was like, I want to listen to the whole album.
We said, wait, was it your first time or was it not your first time listening to it?
It's been a while since I listened to it.
So you've listened to it before, but you just listened to it again recently.
Totally. And I just got so much joy off of it. It was just so it was not like it didn't move me in an emotional way, but it was like it brought me back to when I was in high school watching that era of SNL.
Yeah. When was that? Like early 2010s or something like that?
Yeah.
Probably when it came out.
Yeah, I mean, around that time. Yeah, that was because that was my SNL that I grew up with, and that you grew up with too. The Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Fred Armisen.
Yeah, Jason Sudeikis, Amy Poehler, Tina Fey.
Just listening to that album brought me back to this time, So, and also the cover is amazing, where it's 3 fingers touching E.T.'s finger.
Oh, that's rad. Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah,
I've never listened to that album before.
Turtleneck and Chain. Have you listened to?
Mm-mm.
That has a Mother Lover on it.
I was gonna say like that, like Lonely Island. I do have a fondness for. I've watched, like you said, their digital shorts and they're coming out on SNL. Mother Lover is probably one of my favorite comedy videos on the internet. Period. It's probably the funniest thing I've ever seen. Every time I put it on, it is like I laugh as hard as I did the previous time.
You and I can recite that whole song.
Yeah.
Not only that, but we know the video frame by frame.
Yeah, exactly. We laugh at the imagery along with it. You know how we do for reactions to shit. We point out stupid shit they do in the shots and whatever. We love the same way for Mother Lover. So it's rad.
Chris, what art moved you since we recorded Good Will Hunting?
I've been getting into, and you know this, I've already been getting into them, but I started listening to them more, is Knocked Loose.
Oh, okay.
And I started listening to their album, and they're fucking crazy, man. I keep getting recommended their stuff, and I watched an interview with their singer, Brian Garris. He's an interesting dude. They asked him if he would ever, like, you know, consider trying to sing or moving on to something soft, because for those who don't know, Knocked Loose is like a metal, like hard screamo band, and they're kind of emulating some stuff from back in the early 2000s with a little bit of post-hardcore stuff, you know. And he was basically saying, like, no, they never really, you know, cared. Like, he doesn't like singing. He can't sing. He just says, like, I tried singing in a car, and I'm like, I fucking suck, you know?
Yeah.
But he basically was like, we kind of like being the band that shouldn't make it this far, making it this far in the mainstream kind of thing. So they basically said, like, they just like taking it further, that they shouldn't be this main, like, you know, that they have a sound that isn't like pop accessible.
They appreciate being the outsiders.
Exactly, but still going farther and farther without, you know, compromising for their sound and what they, you know.
Is there an album or song for people who aren't familiar that you would recommend?
Yes, and it's kind of not a super long title, so we'll cut this out, so I'll answer your question again real quick. All right, go ask me that one more time. Sorry.
Is there let's keep this all in. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Is there a album or song that you would recommend to people who haven't heard them?
I mean, they're a lot. You know, their latest album is the one that's like I'm super addicted to. It's called You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to.
Is that the one you've been listening to?
Yeah, that's the one I've been really into. And I forgot the name of the one that they came out with before, but I put that one on, and it also sounds badass. It's mostly their riffs, and like their production is just so meaty and creative.
Okay.
But I will say, when you put on You Won't Go Before You're Supposed to, it's going to open with kind of a jump scare of screamo, and just know it doesn't stay like that for like the whole opening. It literally starts off with just, and just like, it's just a really fucking visceral, ugly intro.
Right. It's an opening, but that doesn't define the entire
which I mean,
record.
it's still that angry. It's still that, you know, powerful, but just know it does have more than that going on.
I'll listen to it too, you know, because I haven't heard them either.
Yeah, you're not big into screamo stuff, so I'd be curious what you would think.
Yeah,
you don't have to like it. Again, it's not for everyone.
I mean, if you're recommending it, then I'll check it out. I mean, you usually, I think, know my taste fairly well.
Yeah, you'll probably have fun with it. Their big song that everyone, you know, like that's been making rounds is Suffocate. It's featuring Poppy. They performed it on Jimmy Kimmel. That was like the whole thing.
So that song I did hear.
Yeah.
And because you showed it to me. And overall, I think I agree with the sentiment that you've been talking about when it comes to them, which is like, it's just cool that they exist in a world that's become very pop centric. It's cool that they're coming out and they're like, it feels like, oh, they're pissed off and they're like expressing it.
And they're not compromising.
And that's cool. Yeah. That's cool that we have that. Like, we need some like artists like them, you know? Well, that was great. I had a lot of fun with that segment. That was really nice. I honestly, I think like it's fun to like never know what you're going to say.
Yeah. Well, each other too.
Exactly. Well, let me introduce the show. Welcome to Movies That Changed Us. I'm Altaf.
And I'm Chris.
And if you're listening to us on Spotify or wherever you listen to our podcast, know that you can also watch us at YouTube, Movies That Changed Us.
And we also do have a Patreon. If anyone likes the show and wants to support us, that would really mean a lot. You don't have to at all. But we do weekly commentary tracks where we basically record ourselves watching movies, and you can watch along with us, so it feels like you're hanging out with us watching movies. And, I know you're eager to say it, but I'm going to say it. I can see you opening your mouth being like, oh, we're watching. But this go around, we're watching the Toy Story movies. We love if you checked it out. We fucking love Toy Story. You can easily pull it up on Disney Plus, sync it up with our audio track, and just watch along.
Hell yeah. And today we're talking about one of our favorite movies.
Gosh.
Chris, how did Napoleon Dynamite change you?
I mean, I fucking love this movie. I've seen this movie 1,000,000 times, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. I've seen this 1,000,000 times. There's no hyperbole here. I sat down. Like every day I'm watching this movie multiple times to get to that count, and I worked really hard.
Oh yeah, you have a counter set up. It's troubling, but yeah.
No, like we met and I was in the middle of watching it again.
Right.
No, but I saw this movie. I didn't see it in theaters, funny enough. I saw it for rental when it came out, and I didn't know anything about it. I just knew the title was Napoleon Dynamite. I think my dad or my sibling rented it or something like that.
Really? You hadn't even heard of it?
No, I hadn't. I just
Okay.
saw it and put it on. It was the weirdest fucking thing I've ever seen. But there's something so obviously this movie is really quirky and has like an offbeat, awkward sense of humor, but there's also such a sincerity and heart to it that I think other movies who tried to capture that feeling didn't quite land.
But when you first watched it, to get to the core of the question.
Yeah.
When you first watched Napoleon Dynamite, not knowing anything about it, what effect did it have on you?
I could not stop quoting it. I got
immediately. You were just
oh
like,
yeah, me and all my friends were constantly being like, "Oh gosh, freaking idiot," saying all that shit to each other. And I got, I had a Vote for Pedro shirt that I wore to school.
I know this.
I think a
about you.
lot of people wore. I think like once that movie came out, it was kind of a movement for like a lot of millennials.
Oh yeah. For me, this movie I was a late bloomer to this movie, watched it in high school, but it was within the vocabulary of everyone my age. So I had heard all the quotes. Like I had heard the Wolverine line. Mm-hmm. I had heard just people doing, gosh. You know?
That was the big one. Or like, give me some of your tots, Napoleon.
I'd seen the poster constantly. You know what I mean? And just, again, going to Blockbuster, seeing it. I didn't watch it until high school. Like my friend put it on at his house. And, sometimes when like everyone around you's been like recommending a movie and yelling at you to watch it. And then when you sit down and watch it, you're kind of nervous.
Because it's been so built up.
And I was being watched while we were watching this movie. Like
and I don't like that. I don't like when people do that.
And I'm rarely on the other side. Yeah. I'm usually the one be like, guys, you need to see this movie. And I was being watched because I was the only person there that hadn't seen it. They're like, Altaf hasn't seen Napoleon Dynamite. And it had the effect on me that it still does, which is the first 15 minutes I am in like tears. I'm laughing. And it never fails to make me happy, this movie. And I think now I'm at a point with this movie where it's just like seeing old friends again. Like when I see Napoleon and Pedro and Deb, they like even Kip and Rico in a weird way. They're like my buddies, Oh
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this world just feels like very cozy, even if it's really awkward and weird. It does feel like, like you're home away from home.
Exactly.
But I mean, like I even had like a little figurine of Napoleon Dynamite that was probably like, I don't know, like a foot tall or something like that.
Right. So you told me this yesterday and I was like, whoa, okay, save this for the pod. And you were like, oh, I thought you already knew that. Yeah. So where'd you get that?
I don't I think I got it as like a Christmas gift once maybe or something like that. I honestly don't remember, but I had it in my room. And it was just the figurine of Napoleon in the suit going to the dance with, like on the cover where he has like the jacket slung over his shoulder.
Okay. I was wondering, did you have the Vote for Pedro's figurine?
Yeah, no, it was that pose. And I think like my friend, when I was like 10 years old or whatever, put his flip phone wedged it between Napoleon's ear and his hand to make it look like Napoleon was just holding a giant phone. And started mimicking him. He just started doing his impression of Napoleon, like, yeah, this is one of the most compact phones I could find. He did some shit like that.
I think there's an argument to be made that this poster is up there as some like the best college dorm room posters, like with Pulp Fiction, with Breaking Bad, even
Social
Network is a big one. Fight Club, classic college dorm room posters. I saw a lot of Napoleon Dynamite.
That checks out. I wonder, I might have had a poster at some point. I honestly don't remember. I was never Napoleon for Halloween. I'm sure people are wondering that just because I don't look anything resembling him. Just side note, that was something growing up that I was always a little insecure about because I don't look like a lot of movie protagonists.
Well, recently I didn't like, when I go out to Halloween now with friends, like so many of my options are cut out just because I guess I could wear a wig, but I don't. Wigs are like annoying, especially if you're going out in the night. But a lot of my options are cut out because I'm bald now.
You could be like, straight to DVD John Travolta characters.
That's good. Yeah. Like Redbox John Travolta.
Redbox John Travolta.
That's good. I like that.
All right, cool. Well, hey, I solved it for you.
Hey, there you go. I could be John Travolta from The Fanatic.
You need a wig for that one. You need that mullet that he's got or whatever.
Oh yeah, I forget he does have a wig.
Jesus, for that. I forgot about that movie.
In order like to celebrate us doing this movie, I wore my best Uncle Rico shirt.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, I wear this shirt a lot on the podcast, but I specifically chose this one because it looks like the most like 70s, 80s like shirt. So you want to get into the themes of this movie?
Yeah, yeah. So is there anything that you had off the bat that you wanted to start off with? Because I have a couple things, but
Yeah, I do. The first point, which I wrote in the notes, is that I think this movie is like a big argument against nostalgia.
Mm.
So Uncle Rico's introduced throwing a football while a camera's recording him.
Oh, I know.
It's immediately ridiculous.
And he like sits like Napoleon and Kip down to like show it to them.
And he is, first of all, the sofa is like so close to the ground. He's like right on the edge looking at the tape, and he'd be like, I could have take state or whatever.
Go back in time.
I take state.
Yeah, yeah.
And he is very nostalgic for obviously his glory days, but specifically the era of time that actually Napoleon and Pedro are living through, which is like high school and just like when I was young, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like it's Uncle Rico's like goal to like get enough money and try to do time travel, all this weird shit, is contrasting heavily with Napoleon and Pedro going through it and Deb going through it. And it's showing that like this time that everyone's nostalgic for is actually just plain embarrassing and stressful and annoying.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I saw this movie as well as like a case against, not to totally switch topics, but I'm just saying like I do think this movie is also like an argument against being special. Like you don't have to be cool to have like a fulfilling life too.
Oh yeah.
None of it's so comfortable being in like bumfuck nowhere.
I mean, that's crazy. My synopsis was basically saying that.
Yeah. And obviously like, okay, so I don't know how many young listeners we have, like, teenager, like early, 20s or like Zoomers, but just know the aesthetic and the costume design and the haircuts and everything in this movie was outdated when this movie came out. Like this is not like the way they all look is not 2004, 2005 when it came out. It felt old when it came out. It felt like people were wondering if the movie took place in the 80s.
Well, no. It's like anachronistic though, because it's still like, I feel like it captures our time really well.
Yeah.
Like it feels like still the school that you and I went to.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like their outfits that feel very like, and outfits, hairdo, all of
and
that.
And they play 80s music at the dance and all that.
And I feel like the reason they did that, the reason Jared Hess did that is because like that's the era, the 80s is like the era that Rico is like very nostalgic about. Yeah. And it's trying to make a point by like, okay, we'll set this in the 2000s, but we'll have them dress and styled like their Uncle Rico's period.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I want to say I always took it as like, I don't know what it's like to grow up in like, I think the movie takes place in Idaho because I think Jared Hess grew up in Idaho. And I've heard that a lot of those middle America states, like have like certain things that are outdated or feel like they're in like their own isolated time capsules.
Right. Where people just didn't move on.
Yeah. But either way, though, I think, I hear what you're saying because there is like, this kind of unique, like it very much wears its heart on its sleeve when it comes to 80s nostalgia stuff too. Him watching a VHS tape. VHS tapes were not like the norm when this movie came out.
Yeah, I mean, this movie came out 2004.
2004, yeah.
So it was this transition period because I remember my family.
But this movie never came out on VHS. I don't think it came out on DVD. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
Like I remember watching it at least that it was like why is he watching a VHS tape?
I just remember my family like going through a transition period where we still had a VHS player.
That's true.
But we had one of those players that was at both VHS and DVD. It was like next to each other. There were two ports.
That's very true, actually. Now that you mentioned that, I had the same thing.
And not everyone just went DVD yet. It was like this weird transition period, and that's what. In this movie, it's also like that. Like the internet exists, but not everyone has a smartphone. Like it's like this weird period of technology.
Which I mean,
I will say, probably like the purest period that we've had with technology.
It's very true. I will say though, I think Uncle Rico would have killed it on TikTok if he like filmed himself throwing footballs and just made that his content every day, just videos of himself throwing footballs. He would have found a niche. He would have carved himself.
Yeah, and he calls himself on TikTok Uncle Rico. Yeah. Everyone would be like, dude, I love Uncle Rico on TikTok. He's like my uncle.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I just want to throw that out there,
Yeah.
But
Uncle Rico and AJ and Big Justice, they all collaborate. They're throwing the football.
That throw gets a boom.
Oh man. Okay, we'll talk about my obsession with the Costco guy some other time. But yeah, so I was thinking a lot about nostalgia. Obviously, Uncle Rico's just like a fascinating character, and I wanted to also explore this time period of high school because I consider this movie like our millennial John Hughes movie. I kind of talked about this with Holes, how like when we were doing the Holes podcast, I mentioned a lot, like we grew up with a lot of like movies like Goonies and stuff like that, like E.T. movies that were handed to us, right? And high school movies are the same thing. Like we grew up with Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Clueless. These were movies that came out before we were born. They were handed to us. We loved them.
They were passed down to us. Yeah.
Passed down to us. And it was a way of like, oh yeah, I can still relate, but it's also like it's another time. And it's a really good movie, but it's another time. And Napoleon Dynamite is like one of those movies where it's just like, oh, this is ours.
Yeah. We got a select few during that time. You know, I think like it was probably Napoleon Dynamite, Mean Girls, Superbad. There's probably another one that hasn't popped.
Those
up
are
in my
the
head.
three. Those are the few that I thought of.
The holy trinity of teen comedies. Even though Napoleon Dynamite's way more wholesome and safe for kids.
Oh, totally. You know, but it captures the John Hughes angst and desperation still. Like it still captures those things, but it's set in the period that we're set in. And I was just like, I was so amazed this time around, like the level of detail they focused on, which is, I remember at one point when Napoleon is giving Deb back her stuff from the locker.
Yeah.
There's, in that same wide shot, you'll notice in the corner, there's a group of kids having their lunch by the lockers. And that shit happened to me where sometimes like, oh, if there's no, like if my lunch period is crowded and there's nowhere to sit, and I never found my way in high school. So I didn't have like one table I used to sit at. I would sometimes sit by the lockers. And that was like, that always was considered this overflow area where like, and I was just, when I saw that, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't think about that. I did something similar, funny enough. I didn't sit at the tables, but I usually went outside and like sat against the wall on the ground with friends, and we'd all kind of stand. Or sometimes, there'd be like a little ledge with plants or something. We sit on those and eat.
This is a great transition to the first question I had. Yeah. Because of the opening credits is all this cafeteria food and all that stuff, and just school supplies. It's a beautiful opening credit sequence.
Dude, that opening credit, I know.
Well, let's.
You want to talk about it now?
Let's touch on it real quick. Cool. Then I'll get to my question.
Got it. Yeah, I mean that opening credits it's very special, and I can't really explain it, to be completely honest. It's hard for me to like break down what I like about it, but it gives me such a nice feeling. I think it's probably the White Stripes song that enhances it.
That song is the theme to Conan's podcast. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Every episode starts with that song.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
And to the point where he's performed it with them live on stage.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's a very nice song. I like White Stripes. But, food in general is a big part of this movie. There's a lot of usage of food, between which they capture very well in that opening by how, like, they put like, I forgot his name, but the actor who played Uncle Rico's name on the steak, and they wrote it out in like horseradish or something like that.
Right. It was like specific food that we all like kind of remember.
Yeah. But it looked so like average. It didn't look like this super highly produced. Like, it's just like, even when it's, again, I forget all their names. I apologize, but the Pedro actor.
The Pedro actor is Efren Ramirez.
Efren Ramirez, yeah. I want to say his is like a plate of nachos.
Wrong. Efren Ramirez was the corn dog, and the nachos were, and I'm reading right here, Aaron Ruel, who played Kip Dynamite. So, tisk, Chris.
But the cheese looked really plasticky, like it looked very okay.
Yeah, it doesn't look like movie food.
Yeah,
you know, where it's like just so. It feels very like. Again, it like captures like that sense memory thing where when you see the burger, you're like, I know that burger.
Yeah, or that peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Well, okay. Can I say my first question then? Because this is what my first question was. What was your favorite cafeteria food?
Cafeteria food or just my lunch when I was at school? Because sometimes I had my lunch made for me.
Let's start with cafeteria food.
Okay. Cafeteria, I had like a chicken patty. That was the one that I liked a lot. The chicken patty, it was like just a general like
Yeah.
for piece of you guys know chicken patties. It was just a little fried circular chicken with some bread and like
It was in a sandwich, right? Yeah.
and I think it came with like you ever have those like those little potatoes that are smiley faces?
Yes.
I think they came with those too.
I definitely like on Fridays they would give us the the cardboard like square pizzas.
Oh yeah. Well yeah, pizza was like kind of the fallback if they didn't have the chicken patties for me.
So that was usually my favorite, but but the chicken patties were really fucking good. I would never mess with the burger because in my high school and middle school there was this like rumor that the burger patties they can bounce. That was a thing we used to say is like, that beef is not real beef. Like literally you can drop it, it'll bounce.
Really? I never heard that. That's
And
so funny.
no one, like at least the people I knew didn't try it.
No one tested it?
Well, because then you would get in trouble if you're just dropping food on the ground because there was like teacher monitors. But it was just like one of those things you heard.
Interesting.
So it was like when I see Napoleon and Pedro eat lunch, it just like reminds me of all of that. Tater tots were like, they were definitely a thing. When we had tater tots, it was huge.
What was your go-to drink in high school? Or middle school or elementary? Just...
Well, I remember like when I was in middle school, the whole Got Milk campaign was everywhere.
Yeah. They would have like those posters of athletes with the milk mustaches.
Yeah, I 100%. I remember. I think there was one with Tony Hawk in my school. I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But so I do remember actually having like chocolate milk and stuff like that a lot in middle school. And by the time I got to high school, we had vending machines. So I wouldn't get any drink like in the cafeteria area. I would go to the vending machine and get a soda. Like I spend like $1.50 and just get a soda or something like that.
Yeah. Sometimes I used to get those bottles of soda.
Yeah.
You know this about me, but listeners, I don't think I've ever shared this, but I have like a pretty gnarly phobia of spoiled milk. Like if milk is like, I don't smell it. Like I'm afraid to smell it if people want me to test if milk is still good. I make someone else do it.
Yeah.
It's like a weird thing for me, with my previous girlfriend, if we ever had spoiled milk, I would like hide behind the couch while she would dump it down the sink. And, so but this might be an answer as to why I'm this way is because I have drank spoiled milk at school before. It was chocolate milk and I drank it. And sorry guys, that this is gross if you don't want to hear about this, but it was immediately solid matter when I drank it.
Oh my God. I don't think I knew this.
Yeah. I was probably like, 9 or 10 years old.
Man.
And I spat it out and it was all grossed out.
Wait, is that the reason?
I'm saying it might be. I don't know. I haven't.
Yeah, you never told me this.
But then in high school, I didn't directly experience this because I didn't drink the milk at this point. But there was a period where like all of our milk was it went bad collectively. And I walked by and I saw someone like holding their carton upside down to dump it, and it was literally like dangling like a tongue.
Oh my God! Yeah.
And I was walking by and I was like, "What the fuck?" So again, sorry listeners if that's gross to you if you're not into hearing about that, but like,
yeah.
But I do have like a weird fucking.
It's one of the few like irrational fears that you have.
It is because
you're usually not that guy. You're usually a pretty logical person, but like with that. It's not even the fact that you're grossed out about it. You're just like, I don't want to look at it.
Oh yeah, no. Like if milk is like gone bad in the fridge, I will like get away from the fridge for a while.
Yeah. No, I mean it's. So I love the attention to detail, especially in the opening credits to stuff like that, the food stuff. But even like, man, like the seeing credits on the chapstick.
Mm-hmm.
Part
and
of me,
lemon head box or whatever.
I wonder if like some of the crew members kept that stuff.
That would be good memorabilia, yeah.
But it also immediately makes you feel like, oh, a group of friends made this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The fact that like the production design put effort into putting that into chapstick or like putting that into this, you know what I mean? Into the props. It feels like, oh, everyone who made this movie cared about it.
Yeah, I mean, I used to look up because like back when I was like heavily into filmmaking and stuff, I used to really get into opening credits. I was like that kind of pretentious kid who wanted to be like, oh, I'm going to make badass opening credits with music cues, cutting to the title, black screen with the text in time.
You were like a teenager who grew up with Tarantino.
Exactly,
like,
exactly,
yeah.
100%. I saw that Reservoir Dogs opening. It was like, oh, the. And I looked up articles of like top 10 best opening credits of all time and stuff. And usually it'd be like Reservoir Dogs, Seven, people brought up too.
Yeah.
Super bad, people brought up. But a common one that I did see a lot was Napoleon Dynamite too.
It's really creative.
Yeah.
And sets the tone for the movie really well.
Yeah, it really does. And then it just does that crossfade to Napoleon just standing there waiting for the bus.
You want to talk about that? Because I laugh. I think that's the hardest laugh I have in the movie.
Well, because to clarify for listeners, you and I watched this movie together probably 4 years ago just for fun.
Just for fun, we put it on.
Yeah, we just put it on. And I remember, because I hadn't seen it in a while at that point.
Right.
I've seen it a million times, but it's just been a while. As soon as it does that crossfade, it was my first time watching it again as an adult. Both of us started bursting out laughing. Nothing happened. It's just Napoleon standing there with a blue t-shirt with horses on it. And his moon boots.
The moon boots. It's always the moon boots, but it's just that's your introduction to him. He's just standing there. He already looks a little exhausted.
He's always so tired of people's shit. His first line. Do you remember the little kid's what are you going to do today, Napoleon? He's like, whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh. Immediately annoyed. You can tell he's been with this kid for a while and he's just tired of his shit.
The touch of him being the oldest person in that bus is also pretty great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's all little fucking 9-year-olds.
That happens sometimes to me. I remember I used to take the bus in middle school a lot. So this is reversed, but in middle school I used to take the bus, and we the sixth graders would share the bus with some high schoolers, which shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah,
but it was
cruising for a bruising.
But it always was kind of scary and kind of impressive seeing them. When a high schooler would come in and you're a sixth grader, I'd be like, whoa, they're big.
I know, they're a foot taller than you at that point.
They feel like giants, and they're in high school.
I know.
It's the shit you see in movies, And so reversed, I did have that a lot.
Yeah.
And then okay, and then also Chris, what does he do?
He takes out a little fucking wrestler action figure with fishing wire wrapped around it. My favorite just throughout the movie is whenever Napoleon's a little stinker, because he's a nerd and he's obviously a huge socially off geek, but he's also he doesn't follow all the rules.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But even I love when Napoleon's about to kind of break rules and he does that little kind of nervous look around real quick because it's so subtle. But yeah, he cracks the window down and then throws the little action figure out and is holding it by the fishing wire to drag it across the ground and is tugging on it.
Every move that the characters make in this movie are so precise.
Yeah.
The physical performances by each of the actors is so good. And the dialogue is amazing and the editing is amazing, but you gotta look at how they move. Even Uncle Rico, when he's talking to Kip in that so things are getting pretty serious scene.
Oh yeah, that little diner.
Yeah, and when Uncle Rico's talking to him, you just notice how he's constantly looking at his muscles.
Oh, I know, the way he crosses his arms and he's checking out his biceps.
Or there's a little bit of food, I think, on his arm or something.
Yeah.
And before he wipes it off, he kind of looks around. He's just I hope ladies are not seeing this. That's in his mind.
Well, I think, I don't know, there's a whole I forget how long it is, but there's a long kind of behind the scenes documentary on the making of this movie.
So I saw it on YouTube because I remember you've talked about this.
Yeah.
It's actually, so it's around 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
And it's a collection of all the featurettes that are in the Blu-ray, I think.
Okay. Because if you watch it, it does have this kind of fly on the wall feeling. There's not a lot of talking heads or anything like that. It's
Which
really
is my
just
favorite kind of featurette.
It's really interesting. And Jared Hess had such a specific vision for what he wanted to convey, because I think he said this movie's kind of not literally autobiographical, but he said kind of the nature of the town and the energy was his upbringing is what he wanted to convey.
Yeah.
He said he had several brothers and he kind of drew a little bit from each of them to create Napoleon and Kip, of them being God, what are you doing? That sort of thing. And so I think he just knew what he wanted to make, because there's video of him telling the actors okay, I need you to lift this up, don't make any face when you do it, just hold it just still right here for about 3 seconds.
Yeah, no, it's quite remarkable. When you watch it as a film nerd, you can really look at it with this kind of you can study this movie.
You can appreciate the blocking. It's a good looking and smooth to watch movie. It's well edited and well shot. There's actually a lot of really pretty shots, that one wide of Pedro bringing the cake to Summer's house.
I was actually constantly in my rewatch yesterday, I was pausing the movie.
Yeah.
And I was kind of doing this thing of like, this could be my wallpaper. Oh, this could be my
Exactly.
wallpaper.
There's a lot of actually pretty shots in this movie for how like weird and stupid it is.
I want to shout out someone who is Jared Hess's writing partner in this movie. Her name was Jerusha. Her name is Jerusha Hess. She's Jared Hess's wife.
Oh, they both wrote it together? I actually didn't know that. I knew there was another writer.
You might have already known this. They originated this from a short film they made.
Yeah, I've seen that short film too. It came with the DVD. He's about to sneeze.
Oh my God.
For those who weren't watching, for audio listeners, Altaf was making a face like, hang on, stop talking about the sneeze, but I didn't want to.
Good call.
But yeah, I did go off what you're saying though. I have seen that short film. Have you seen it?
No. I should watch it, but I just found out that it exists yesterday.
Yeah, it's still Jon Heder too.
I know it's just, so I looked at the cast, it's still Jon Heder, and his name is Seth though.
Yeah, and there's some scenes that are kind of reenacted, like they do the bus scene of him being like, but it's like, I think he's like a nice kind of happy kid. He's like, what are you going to do today, Seth? You know, there's like a couple little things like that, but yeah, it's just a weird short film that they came out with that they made into a feature.
So we've been talking a lot about the cinematography and just the filmmaking in general. So I want to quote, I'm going to be a little pretentious film bro-y here for a second, but I want to quote Charlie Chaplin, a great quote that a lot of maybe our listeners has probably heard and you've probably heard. But Charlie Chaplin said this: "Life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but comedy in a long shot."
That's interesting.
Napoleon Dynamite is that. Like, a lot of the shots are wides, and they don't cut to a close-up unless it's absolutely necessary. And I wrote some examples of like my favorite like jokes that are all done in a wide. Napoleon trying out Pedro's bike.
Oh, dude, I know. Well, I think my favorite part about that whole bit, because, you know, for just to remind listeners, it's basically like Pedro and Napoleon are just starting to become friends. They're just starting, you know, it's just very silent between them, but they're just starting to connect a little bit because he shows him his bike, and Napoleon's like, you got shocks, pegs,
Lucky.
Yeah. And he's like, you ever take it off any sweet jumps? And then it just cuts to like after school where it's like, okay, I'm going to show you.
And they've got this like rig set up.
Yeah. And so Pedro rides his bike over. It's a cute little hop that he does. And it like zooms in on Napoleon. And he's like, you got like 3 feet of air that time. And then Napoleon gives it a shot. And then immediately the whole thing just crashes and he hits himself, you know, in the junk.
It makes me laugh so hard.
My favorite part about that though is when he crashes and he's all like, oh, you know, Pedro's just standing there. like I don't know if you really noticed, like he's in the middle of the frame with his hands in front of him, just doesn't move a muscle the entire time.
Like, what's in these guys' heads? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on there? I think I love that scene too because it's a great like example of who Napoleon is. Like, for Napoleon, his first confrontation with Pedro is just like, do you have any like skills? Like,
well, he says like there's a buttload of gangs at this school. This one gang kept wanting me to join because I'm pretty good at the bow staff. Whatever he says.
And Napoleon's whole idea of cool is like, I gotta have skills.
Like, I'm a warrior.
And like he really believes that. And it's just like this whole, as silly as it is, it does capture that feeling really well of like, you will do anything and you will be anyone to fit in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want to be Evil Knievel, so I'm going to try out Pedro's bike, and I'm going to try doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Napoleon values that kind of like fantastical, badass fantasy. You know what I mean?
He wants to be in that cool high school movie that he's not a part of. The way he asked Pedro, so you got my back and everything?
Yeah.
And it's just like, what? Like, what is that? Like, he acts like he's in a movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, and him telling, you know, I think his name's Don or Dom, the blonde guy who makes all the faces that we like. You know, Summer's boyfriend.
Yes, dude.
You know, when he tells him...
He's one of my favorite people in this movie.
He barely speaks this movie, but he's so fucking good.
Talk about physical performances, yeah.
Yeah.
Every wide shot is just him being like, okay.
Yeah. But when he makes shit up, when he's like, I was hunting wolverines in Alaska, you know, he always has to make himself out to be that. Or when he lies to Pedro about his girlfriend, you know. Exactly.
He goes to another school, got her some glamour shots.
Yeah.
I love when he opens up the wallet to show her. It's like this Velcro and the picture's too big for the wallet. But I wrote down their exchange here because it's an iconic exchange and I just want to...
you want to celebrate it?
Well, actually, do you have the Google Docs up? Can you be Napoleon and I'll be Don?
Oh, just read the dialogue? Yeah. Sure.
So I'll be Don. Hey, Napoleon, What did you do last summer again?
I told you I spent it with my uncle in Alaska hunting wolverines.
Did you shoot any?
Yeah, like 50 of them. They kept trying to attack my cousins. What the heck would you do in a situation like that?
What kind of gun did you use?
A freaking 12 gauge. What do you think?
So that's the thing I love about Napoleon. Even when he's bullshitting, he's like pissed off that they would even ask him that.
Yeah.
Let's go through the next like wide shot. That
yeah. The wides that are funny. Funny
Rex
wides.
teaching Kip how to fight.
Dude, I know. Rex Kwon Do, we're like over 30 minutes into this and we haven't even mentioned Rex Kwon Do. My fucking Christ, dude. He is so funny.
I mean, from Office Space, this guy too.
Two chicks at the same time.
Rex Kwon Do is just like really funny, and aside from just being really funny, it's just it's this idea that Napoleon and Kip are just like, we should go and learn how to fight.
Well, Kip wanted to do it originally. I think Napoleon was just tagging along. You remember when he walked over and Kip was putting on his rollerblades? And he's like, it'd be nice if you can pull me into town.
And then it cuts to that shot of him. That's another wide shot that we
like,
did.
why can't Kip ride his own bike? I don't understand why he needs Napoleon to do that.
He's riding his bike and he's like dragging him.
Which I think Napoleon says, like, Kip's like 32 years old. Like, why does he not have the means to get himself there?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about the Rex Kwon Do scene?
I mean,
is there much to say about it?
Yeah, it's so
It's the outfit. Do you think, like, the fact that he's like, you think you get these bad boys?
Oh, yeah. You think anyone wants to take a roundhouse kick to the face while I'm wearing these bad boys? Forget about it.
Also, Rex Kwon Do, the ultimate wife guy, he, like, loves his
Oh, yeah, he has,
wife.
like, a photo of her in his own dojo.
He's like, I'm proud of her.
Yeah. He was like, she's ripped as shit.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, though, the way people hurt each other is just so funny. Like, you know, even it's set up earlier when, Napoleon and Kip, hit each other when Kip challenges him, like, come over here and see what your best move is, whatever he says. And how they just kind of like awkwardly slap each other throughout.
Yeah.
It's like the only way they hurt each other in this movie is that and then like headlocking each other.
Well, the entire energy of this movie is very awkward. Like every time there's a musical swell in a scene where it feels like, okay, this feels like a movie scene, right? The score is coming up and everything. It'll hard cut to an entirely different situation where, like, I don't know, Napoleon is trying to put chickens in a cage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or when he's standing in the hallway and the bully, he's never named, but that one bully who's recurring, how he pushes him into the locker, then Napoleon just kind of kicks the air towards him.
I know. And it just like, it constantly, like every scene transition has the same tonal energy of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So going back to Rex Kwon Do, though, when he's like, come up here, let's have a volunteer. And he just slaps Kip around in front of everyone. He's like, I'm just going to break the wrist, walk away. Grab my arm, the other arm, my other arm. God damn, I know I'm quoting it a lot.
And Napoleon looks at Rex Kwon Do with such fear. Like he's just like,
well, and the best part is like Rex Kwon Do doesn't pay off until the end of the movie and has nothing to do with Napoleon and Kip. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's only Uncle Rico that's directly affected by it, but it just pays off so well.
I just think this movie does such a good job of like presenting a town.
Yeah. Well, that's like the movie. It's like all setting and like vibes. There's not a lot of plot. There is plot. Of course, there's plot and there's like emotions and the characters
the closest
grow.
thing we get to like a plot is the campaign.
Yeah, which doesn't happen until like halfway through the movie or something.
Oh yeah, when he's like drinking water and then looks at the poster, gets an idea.
They play like the A-Team theme where they're putting the flyers up.
I mean, the best shot is like in that montage of them putting the flyers up is that Napoleon puts a flyer up and then looks at the camera and looks to the side.
And it cuts to them like clasping their hands together.
Napoleon Pedro, one of the great movie friendships.
I know. I mean, I have a couple, things to say myself, but what do you think is special about their friendship?
It feels selfless.
Mm-hmm.
It's through Pedro you get to see Napoleon for the first time be selfless. Like he's not constantly thinking about how he's carrying himself. You know what I mean? Like I think when you're in that age, especially, you're thinking so much about yourself, right? You're thinking about how you look, how you presented yourself, and all that stuff.
Your insecurities are very, very strong, and
it's your world.
Yeah, and I think, I get what you're saying because I think he learns to kind of feel more comfortable in his own skin through the friendship of both Pedro and Deb.
And there's something. So there's this undercurrent of just racism against Pedro.
Oh, from the principal especially. When he first introduces himself, he's like, now you do understand English. this isn't that complex. Like, what the fuck? And then
But
later,
it approaches that kind of racism with a sense of like normalcy.
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
think is very honest. Like I kind of like I had a part of my childhood where I grew up in Maine, where I was the only, not just the only Indian kid, but I was only like I was the only person of color in my school.
Yeah, yeah.
And this was elementary school, and you think back to moments like that and the way some people talk to you. And it's just a casual sense of racism that happens. It's not like aggressive. It just happens.
Yeah. They almost think they're not doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
Like, I remember when the principal said, like when the piñata incident happens, he was like, I don't know how people do things down in Juarez, but here we have a little something called pride. Like, Jesus Christ.
And so the reason I bring this up is Napoleon doesn't give a shit about any of that. Napoleon doesn't, like, honestly, their race doesn't even come up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this like Napoleon is this hero. I'm just saying I like that. Like, Napoleon sees Pedro for who he is on the inside, and Pedro sees Napoleon for who he is on the inside.
Yeah.
And that's like true friendship. And I just think they have such like an honest and sincere relationship.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the honest and sincerity just comes in the actions between each other. Like, they don't
Exactly. Like, they don't talk that much.
That's what I'm saying. They're very kind of quietly sitting together, kind of just vibing, but you just know their appreciation for each other, which is, I think, more accurate to how, teenage friendships are. Teenagers aren't emotionally equipped to be like, hey, man, I've been feeling a lot of things lately.
And I appreciate you being there for me. No,
Yeah.
they're just there for each other.
Yeah, they just are. They just exist, and their gestures of support speak for themselves throughout the movie.
The fact that like Napoleon's immediately supportive of Pedro running for the campaign, when Pedro's like doesn't really know what he's going to say in his speech, Napoleon very sincerely, as ridiculous as it sounds, Napoleon is just like, maybe you should say something like your wildest dreams will come true.
Yeah.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments is that moment of when Summer leaves Napoleon and just goes out with her friends.
Trisha.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Trisha leaves Napoleon during the dance. Napoleon comes back. Trisha isn't there. And he's looking around. And suddenly it cuts to the shot of just like fucking Deb and Pedro just right next to him. It's like, Napoleon. And
which I want to shout out real quick the characters of Summer and Trisha. They're so good. But the actors and the writing of their characters, just because like I feel like all of us knew Summers and Trishas in school. And I'm not just saying like, oh, cute popular girls. I'm not just trying to say they're all awful people, whatever. But we all know like the awful people who are like spoiled bratty girls.
Oh yeah.
In high school.
To me, if there was a couple girls in my school that would just get during lunch, their moms would just bring Chick-fil-A to them during lunch.
Really? Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I forget you're in California. In Tennessee, in Knoxville, Chick-fil-A was like Taco Bell. It was every other block.
Yeah,
that was like
sure.
primary fast food.
But yeah, I was pretty dorky. I had it. I'm just gonna slight side tangent. But I remember in 8th grade, I was really isolated. Like, I didn't have a lot of friends in my classes. I didn't know anyone, and I was only living in that town for a year at that point. So it's not like I had a bunch of elementary school, a bunch of friends, And so we were all sitting in table groups in like a library for some reason. We had some class in the library, and I sat totally by myself in my table, right? Like, people had their groups. I was only by myself.
Yeah.
And that one cute girl that I'm talking about, like, I forgot why, but she like, there was no room and she ended up having to sit with me. And she was telling her friends, like, guys, I don't want to be alone. Just don't leave me alone here. And they were all like dying laughing. Like, almost like it's so funny that she's like alone with me, like the fucking weird quiet kid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that, like, just watching this movie, I'm like, I know those girls that exist. And I'm sure they're, like, I know the Doms too,
Well, his name is Don.
Don. That's
Which
what it is.
I need to point that out, how funny that is, that his name is Don.
Like, we all knew Dons too,
Totally. The reason why Don's great, speaking of my whole like obsession with the wide shot, Don is funniest when he's far away in the shot, where you can kind of just spot him.
When you can just make him out.
And you're just like, because he stands out. He's really tall. The actor is Trevor Starr.
Trevor Starr?
Snar.
Okay.
Trevor Starr. And he's just so good. Yeah, man. I mean, but that's the thing. I just think like Pedro and Napoleon have like the purest form of like what friendship means at that time of your life.
Yeah. And I also appreciate, Napoleon's connection and feelings for Deb too.
Oh yeah.
That it's done again. It's sincere, but it doesn't do it in like a like. There's no moment where he says like "I like you" or anything like that. But you just see it all through their actions to each other. When he goes to sit with her, it's like, "I see you're drinking 1%. Is that because you think you're fat? Well, you're not. You could be drinking whole if you wanted to."
It just comes from that place where Napoleon means well, but he also read this line in a book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really relate to that. I relate to so the thing when I was in high school and when middle school and high school, I like would constantly try to be someone else every year.
Yeah, sure.
And
We were all putting on different hats.
and everyone's had that experience, but like I would think to myself, this year in high school, I'm going to be like the very cool and quiet guy. And I remember the first few days of that year, I would try to be silent.
Like you're trying to be like brooding.
Yeah, and it didn't work because eventually my real self would come out. And but I just never really liked who I was, so I would try to be everything else. And it's not that deep. It's just the fact that you don't know who you are, you're figuring it out, and you're throwing everything against the wall. So I really relate to Napoleon in that level of just like him lying about the Wolverines thing.
Yeah.
Like as ridiculous as it all feels, it's coming from a place that's really honest.
Yeah, and you see those layers gradually being shed as Uncle Rico starts like lying about Napoleon himself too.
Yeah.
Eventually towards the end when Uncle Rico becomes like straight up villain, because he was like a dick and he was annoying, but like he actually starts like hurting Napoleon's life and his social, interactions with people.
I mean, yeah, he starts handing out breast enhancement
Like herbal enhancers. Yeah.
to like teenage girls, and he gives it to Deb, saying that like Napoleon would want you to have this.
The most uncomfortable scene in the whole movie.
I forget about it every time.
Yeah, it's so awful when he's like, a soft face must be complimented by a soft body. Whatever he says, they're like, fucking hell, man, what a weirdo.
And then that moment where Deb just calls Napoleon, he's like, "You're a shallow friend," It's always shocking to me when that scene happens.
I think once Napoleon, obviously famously throws an orange at Uncle Rico's car, I think Napoleon's starting to come into his own. Not to overanalyze it because this movie's so ridiculous, but like, he gets that VHS tape and starts actually dancing, which, I mean, fucking incredible when he comes down and meets LaFonda and he's like drenched in sweat.
And then the way he drinks the Gatorade too is what I love. It's just he takes a breath and then chug, 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 and then takes a breath. Like
we've all been in that place though. We've been so fucking tired and we had like that Gatorade or that like
that sugar,
that
like
electrolyte drink. With that being said though, yeah, it pays off very nicely when he like actually does the cool thing, because he's been like kind of making shit up the whole movie about stuff he does, and then he goes out and just dances his ass off.
Yeah. Don't step on it.
Oh yeah. But I'm just saying, like, just going off of Napoleon's character development, it pays off very nicely.
I have a second question for you.
Okay.
I feel like a big character in this movie are the outfits.
Yes.
Did you have a go-to? I'm not saying you had to be like Napoleon where you wore the same shit every day. Did you have a go-to style in school? Like in high school, did you have a go-to, like, this is kind of what I'm comfortable wearing?
Yeah. I was a like metalhead. Well, maybe not metalhead, but I liked a lot of like 90s alternative, and I liked, like Deftones and that kind of stuff. I often wore like flannels and like skinny jeans. That was usually my look.
Oh,
and I had like long hair, which is funny. I have longest hair I've ever had now, but I had like kind of emo, like bangs, long hair when I was in high school. And maybe we'll pop up a picture if there's anything good.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I would wear a flannel or I'd roll up my sleeves,
Okay. I feel like I didn't think I knew that. I didn't know like it was that specific. But so here's the thing. I didn't have like a go-to style of outfit, except there was one year. Most of the time I went to school, just wore whatever was in my closet. I didn't have like a specific thing, There was one year where I just decided, again, this was just a ploy for like anything to get some attention, like any fucking thing. Like I wanted to have some sort of identity.
Yeah, you wanted your like branding.
Where I just decided every Monday I'm going to show up to school dressed up.
Oh, okay.
And it was specific, like every Monday. And like I wanted people to know like Monday Altaf's going to dress up, and I would talk about it. Like I'm going to dress up Monday.
Did you actually enjoy it, or was it purely for attention?
I enjoyed it a little bit. I did enjoy it. I always like dressing up. I don't
Sure.
I like kind of looking good. but it was like 80% for attention.
Which is fair. I mean, 80% of what we all did in high school was for attention.
And
Usually,
a lot of people like laughed.
yeah.
But in my opinion, it was like, if they're laughing at me, at least they're talking about me.
Oh yeah, it's like a reaction kind of thing. I get you.
Like I want, it's the whole reason when I was in high school, I started a YouTube channel where I talked about like news and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, which ended up teaching, like I taught myself how to edit, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't do that. So I have to think that, but like I remember when Vine came out, I would make these like very silly, goofy Vines, but I did it so people in my school would watch them.
Yeah.
Like
makes sense.
So I remember that was kind of what I did. Yeah.
To be clear, for like when you say you dressed up, do you mean like you wore a full suit and slacks and like a tie, or like what does that mean, dressed up?
I wouldn't do suit. But
Okay.
I would do shirt, tie, dress pants, dress shoes.
Because in my senior year of high school, I did wear ties a lot. Like I wore
You did tell me about this.
I wore
remember.
sweaters with like a dress shirt underneath and a tie.
Yeah.
And I would loosen it to kind of make it look super casual.
Yeah.
Or I would wear a hoodie with a button up underneath and a tie.
Yeah, you were like Joseph Gordon-Levitt in 500 Days
kind
Summer.
of a little bit. Yeah, no, that kind of was
Well, you
my
were
aesthetic.
also like a fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah, so there might have been some
inspiration there.
Definitely, yeah. But I didn't do that until senior year. And then occasionally I did it in my early like adulthood when I moved to LA and all that stuff. But eventually I stopped because I was like, oh, I'm in the adult world now. I can't do shit like that.
Hey, I mean, you can if you want to.
No, you can for sure. But eventually I realized like, oh, I look, or I don't feel like myself doing it. I feel like I'm trying to put on a character.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to the
dance scene.
Do you have anything you'd like to just shout out?
Yeah, I got a couple shouties.
Let's do some shouties.
So shouties to Kip and LaFonda. We haven't fully gotten into that, but Kip and LaFonda are so funny as well.
Can we just do...
Do you want to have a quick...
Can we do a couple minutes on Kip?
Yeah, of course.
So Kip Dynamite, which is just like, Napoleon Dynamite, amazing name. We haven't even mentioned the fact that like Jared Hess and Jerusha Hess came up with one of the best fucking character names ever.
Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah.
I know.
But then also the idea of Kip Dynamite just flows so well.
I know. You don't even realize his last name's Dynamite, even though it obviously is, but they don't say it until the post-credits sequence when in the wedding.
Played by Aaron Ruel.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you pronounce the last name, but that's how it's written. Just as good as Jon Heder when it comes to physical performance. You're introduced to him. The introduction is Napoleon calling him because he's kind of sick, and he's just grating cheese over tortilla chips.
Oh yeah. He's in the middle of making white people nachos.
A big fucking block of cheddar. Like,
and he answers the phone like, "Hi."
I mean, what do you think of Kip?
I mean, Kip is a voice I love to do. Like, I just, he's one of those, like, Napoleon, no need to be jealous or anything. He has, like, such a unique way of speaking.
Yeah.
With this, like, little mustache and his braces.
Again, I think, like, a lot of people do the Napoleon impression, but I feel like the Kip voice is just as iconic.
Yeah, it really is. And their chemistry together is just so great.
They feel like brothers.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, as insane as both those guys are, they do feel like brothers.
Well, I think, again, Jared Hess, based it off of his own relationship with his brothers when he wrote it. Like I said, in the violence, it's all slaps and headlocks. But when Napoleon's like headlocking Kip, and he's like, everyone in school thinks I'm an idiot because of Uncle, whatever, right? When he lets him go, he's like, oh, I think you ripped my mole off. He's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, is it bleeding? A little. Like that's brother shit.
He's like, wait, are you okay?
Yeah. Like they're fighting, but they're also like, wait, I didn't want to really
Holy
hurt
shit, you are my brother.
Yeah. Because mom will get us in trouble is really what the energy is. And speaking of which, they never explained the parents' situation. Like their grandma takes care of them.
Their aunt.
No, it was grandma.
Oh, it is grandma? Okay.
Their grandma takes care of them. But you don't know anything. Yeah, I know. Grandma.
Who ends up writing Dunes, and Napoleon's response is like, she never did that. Like,
like boyfriend.
Like, how much do you know about her? Like,
I know. And again, never pays off, but it's totally fine.
Yeah,
But
make yourself a damn quesadilla.
Shouty to grandma, too. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so back to Kip.
Yeah.
His image of things are getting pretty serious. That meme is probably the first thing I'd ever saw of Napoleon Dynamite.
Him swirling like a little cup of froyo. He's like, so are you and Tammy still together?
I'm pretty sure that's like the first meme I remember.
Oh, really? The one that I see a lot is him doing like at the bowling alley going like, yes. Yeah. That one I see a lot.
So the LaFonda thing.
Yeah.
He's been chatting with babes. You obviously don't believe him because especially when he's talking to Uncle Rico, how he's like, I'm kind of TO'd. Because
she won't send me a full body shot yet.
And it cuts back to Uncle Rico, And there's a solid 3 seconds when it cuts back to Uncle Rico where Uncle Rico doesn't say anything. Like, it's amazing editing. But I don't know, man. I think it might be one of the biggest twists in cinema when LaFonda shows up.
And she's like exactly as into him as she portrayed herself online.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
This
and
tall
she's like,
black woman.
and she's so fucking hot for Kip. You know what I'm saying? Like she like the when
It's not even that she likes him. She's horny for him.
So fucking horny for him. Like when Kip feeds her the froyo and then her mouth, the way she like licks her lips and winks at him.
And they have their own like music when it cuts to Kip and LaFonda.
Yeah. And Kip taking his sandal off and rubbing his sock on her toe.
It's like a slightly dirty sock. It's not a clean one. Yeah, it sucks.
But you're like oddly happy for them. They seem like complete opposites that shouldn't be together, but
yeah, like they're gonna be okay.
Yeah, and they go off together. You know, they find their thing. Any other shouties we got to go over?
I'm
Tina, the llama.
Tina, you fat lord.
Yeah,
dude, I laughed so fucking hard when he comes out and he's trying to feed Tina
casserole.
There's something about that shot. He's like,
eat the food. like he's so tired of feeding Tina.
Like he hates Tina.
To the farm, job scene. Do the chickens have large talons, and then them eating on their lunch break with those sandwiches covered in flies, and like that picture of eggs.
Of yolk.
Yeah,
I thought about you because I know how much you don't like yolk.
I do not like yolk. Yeah,
so it's like that would be torture for you.
And then he's like, well, can't find my checkbook. I hope you don't mind to pay you in change. And then,
also like remember like when that guy just shoots the cow in front of the kids?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, Lyle.
Lyle, yeah.
And well, that's the same guy. He's working at the farm. I think that's how we got hooked up with the job.
Which, without subtitles, you don't understand a word he's saying.
When he's like loading up the 12 gauge and he's like, nothing around here works straight. It had like kind of King of the Hill energy a little bit.
Dude, great thing. I was going to mention King of the Hill. A lot of these characters feel like King of the Hill characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
It captures that same vibe really well.
But, and then,
I wouldn't be surprised if Jared Hess and Jerusha Hess were like inspired by like, what's his name?
Whoa, why am I drawing a blank on his
name?
You
are never helpful in these situations. Whenever
one, well, especially that one in particular, I'm like, wow, I actually took a course on him and shit.
Mike Judge.
Yeah, okay, I knew it was like just one syllable each.
Whenever I forget a name, I feel like consistently you are also like, oh fuck, I forgot to.
Yeah, I'm not good with names.
Okay.
I remember all the women I boned though.
Actually, dude, mad respect. That's fucking cool. Okay, so I don't think I have any other shouties, mostly just because I could list them off for like days and it would just be us quoting the movie.
Shouty to Happy Hands Club. Shouty to Happy Hands Club's rendition of Larger Than Life by Backstreet Boys. I do think Larger Than Life by Backstreet Boys is a very underrated Backstreet Boys song.
Yeah.
I feel like
it's great.
Everyone's all about I Want It That Way and everybody, but Larger Than Life is also a great song. We need to appreciate it.
I'm glad you're shouting it out on this podcast.
The Backstreet Boys don't get enough love. You know what I mean?
We
need to promote them.
They really do get love. They get a lot of love. They might be evergreen. Like it might not go away. Yeah. Like I was thinking about that. I was just like, even though Backstreet Boys doesn't have as many good songs, they might be as evergreen as Beatles.
Yeah. Well, they still perform in like Vegas, I think.
I know. It's amazing.
Good for them.
Good for them.
Hey guys, Chris here with a couple shouties that Altaf and I forgot while we were recording the podcast. The first one's going to be Uncle Rico grabbing Kip's steak and throwing it right at Napoleon's face. When Altaf and I watched that movie and got to that scene, we could not fucking breathe laughing. I really need to emphasize how hard we laughed when you did that scene. And then the other big shouty we wanted to drop was for that couple that Uncle Rico was selling the Tupperware to when he tells the husband to give the Tupperware the tear and he can't tear it and his wife's looking at him judgingly. We just want to jump in and leave those behind for you.
Okay, you want to move on to the dance scene?
Yeah, let's talk about the dance scene.
It's one of those things where I feel like everyone our age tried to like do it.
Yeah, can I tell you a story?
Go for it.
I might have told you this already, but this is more for listeners. That in my senior year of high school...
You did tell me this.
Okay. So I'll share it for listeners. In my senior year of high school, this guy named Pedro was actually running for class president.
Oh my God.
And he went up. And so basically the similar setup where everyone had to give a speech and then some sort of skit or some sort of act or performance.
Yeah, we had that in our school too.
Yeah. And he went up and did the word for word same speech. He went up and he was like, I don't have much to say, but if you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true and all that stuff.
Did everyone in the audience recognize what he was doing?
It took a second. People were kind of laughing and whatever. But then the same song, Canned Heat, started playing. And he took his blazer off and he was wearing the Vote for Pedro shirt. Audience went apeshit.
Yeah.
And then he did the exact dance. And then the same, like he cut out at the same time. And then he ran off stage the same way. He literally just, and then guess what? He won.
I mean, yeah, how could you not? Okay, so that's the thing about this dance is that, first of all, it's teased by Napoleon, like with a sliver of his door, starting to practice, coming out sweating. It's
Are
kind
you
of
ready to get your groove on? Yes.
La Fonda throwing him the tape, right?
Yeah.
When he first starts dancing with his hands in his pockets moving, you're laughing like everyone, right? You're just kind of just being like, oh, Napoleon's going to do a weird dance. I will say every time I watch it, by the time he's in the middle of his routine, I'm just impressed.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing. Jon Heder, man, he can move his hips.
I know. He can actually dance. And, Jared Hess wrote that scene for Jon Heder because obviously they worked together at that point.
So he probably knew Jon Heder could dance.
He liked to dance. I guess that was the thing. And he told Jon Heder, like, hey, by the way, I'm going to make you dance in this movie, and it's going to make or break the movie. Basically,
it's probably the most important scene.
It is, yeah. And they obviously, what I love too is obviously it's a really funny dance scene, but they cut the close-ups of Deb too, like smiling like earnestly.
I know,
because it's like she's like proud of him for like stepping up,
and he does it for his friend.
Yeah.
Here's what I find really special about it is that Pedro walks away, and Napoleon goes up and does it.
Yeah.
And when Napoleon's done with the dance, he runs off, and he's not there for everyone to cheer. He's not there for all like the celebratory.
He doesn't bask in the glory of it. He just walks.
He walks away like a Western cowboy,
and then he just goes home. Remember, it's just like it just follows him walking home.
And the movie, being so efficient, starts kind of wrapping up really quickly.
Yeah.
But again, like it feels like a Western in that sense. I'm not trying to hammer it home. It's just like I've done my job and now I leave.
Yeah.
And the way it cuts, like he's walking by the train. Like it's like
he's seeing everything's okay. But
I think that's why the scene works. It does have that emotional heart to it.
Yeah. I'm sure you already know this, but just for listeners as well, some kind of fun trivia is that this was like one of the last scenes that they shot when they did this, when they were making the movie.
Okay.
And they were on their last reel of film. They only had about 10.5 minutes of footage, or footage left to shoot, basically.
Wait, and just 10.5 minutes?
10.5 minutes. So they basically told Jon Heder, like, you need to get this right because it's the most important scene in the movie. And they basically gave him only 3 takes and he improvised the dance. And he danced.
Oh my God.
He danced to 3 different songs.
Wait, he improvised it?
Yeah, I think he knew the scene was coming up, but they didn't do like a tight choreography or anything like that. You know what I mean? He just kind of whipped it up, and they mixed and matched 3 different takes that they did, and all 3 different takes had different songs because they didn't know what they could get the rights for.
Wow.
So they kind of mixed and matched.
Which is wild because when you see the dance, you're just like, there's no other song.
I know. I was just telling you before we started recording that like my requirement for whomever I end up marrying in the future, that song has to play at some point during the dancing after the wedding. It has to play at my wedding somewhere.
Yeah. I honestly feel like I could talk to you about this movie forever.
Yeah. I know.
This is probably the smoothest podcast we've done just because like you and I are just like, we just noticed that like, oh, we're already past an hour. Like, what a special movie, man.
Yeah.
It really is. It means so much to me, this movie. And I know it does for you too.
100%. It's one of my favorites.
Well, in the comments, please let us know like how this movie like changed you or just in general, like your relationship with this movie, because we'd love to hear your.
Yeah, we shot this kind of last minute. I'm sure those who follow our social medias notice that we didn't put up a prompt because we're moving some stuff around because you're going out of town soon. So we just wanted to get a shoot out really quickly and didn't have time to ask. So, but with that being said, in the comment section, whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, use this as a chance. If you have any special anecdotes around Napoleon Dynamite, please leave them below. We'd still love to reply and hear what you have to say.
100%. We'll be in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons for supporting us again and again. We really appreciate it. Last but not least, stay nice, dudes.
Gosh.